I have a very exciting moment right now. I am joined by a BBC Upload poet live from the Shard. Is that right, James Pendle? Where are you?
Yes, I am at the Shard, Alice.
You are at the Shard.
I was at an event put on by Heropreneurs, who are a charity that support people who are leaving the services, whether men or women, or the spouses of people who have left the services, to develop their business idea.
Wow. So it's sort of the next step after the affiliation they've had perhaps with the forces before. Now,
obviously the forces can in some respects be quite a small world where you're kind of sheltered from what civilian life is like, and actually setting up a business can be a very difficult thing if you've got no connections, if you've got no real idea of how the business world works in City Street. And so the charity helps people in the services, many of whom have a great deal of initiative, and that's why they went into the services, to turn that initiative into a business idea. That
sounds amazing. So I was talking a little earlier about the green room that we have here, and how if you come to BBC Upload, you rub shoulders, but it sounds like everyone's rubbing shoulders there, and finding people to kind of connect with and bond and make their next idea come to life.
That's what I'm in sort of slightly unusual situation that I'm developing myself as a poet, but I did a poem that linked very much in with the kind of the ideas that were being spoken about today. So I managed to take part in it as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, look, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what's going on tonight. But for anyone that hasn't been introduced to your work through BBC Upload yet, you also had a chat with Shay this week. James Pendle, you are a poet. You're also a social worker and work with people that are navigating mental health. And you are doing so much. And you spent Remembrance Day at Paddington Station this week.
Yeah, that's right. I'm the resident poet at Paddington Station. And what I was doing is I've got this idea, I call it the bespoke poet. I go up to people and I talk to them about a subject. So I was saying to people, what does Remembrance Day mean to you? And then depending on what they said, I then recited a poem from my memory bank, either one of my own poems or somebody else's, that I thought connected with their understanding of what Remembrance Day is.
You're speaking to a gal who always relies on notes and lyrics, even at her own music gigs. How many poems have you got in that head of yours that you could just recite to someone?
Oh, over 50.
Wow. And are some of them, are they a mixture in length?
Yeah, they are. I mean, some of them are very long. Some are sort of 3 or 4 minutes long, and some of them are very short. And as I say, they're a mixture. I've got poems from different times in history, men and women, different sort of cultural backgrounds, everything from Benjamin Zephaniah.
Amazing. And how fantastic that you've got all of those things that you can remember and recite for people, because it's such a quick way, isn't it, I guess, to share those creative influences in your life. I mentioned your CV there, that not only are you a poet that's come through BBC Upload, but you're also a ex-veteran. You served in the forces yourself.
That's right, I did, yes, between 1991 and 1997.
And how has that shift been from that sort of career, then taking a step back and going into the creative arts around your other work? Is it something that always stuck with you? Where, when you had, dare I say it, a moment to yourself in the busyness of a job like that previously? I mean, you were a captain in the forces. Did you ever have moments where you had time to sort of jot something down or create whilst you were on the job?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I mean, I wrote a kind of poem when I first got posted out to Germany. It was my first posting after I completed my training, and it was kind of quite a kind of enthusiastic poem that I would sometimes recite. After a few beers have been had in the mess, which would keep people entertained. And then when I was in Northern Ireland, I wrote a poem which wasn't terribly good, but I've since written one about the experience there, which has actually won an award. So yes, it certainly has been an inspiration for some of the poems that I've written and performed.
For sure. Tell everyone a little bit more about that award, because come on, we can't undersell ourselves here. Come on, James, give it to me.
Competition put on by in Ealing, and the judge was Anthony Thwaite, who was the literary editor of both the Listener magazine, which people might not know about now. It was kind of a very well-respected sort of literary magazine, and also I think the New Statesman, which was also has a lot of poetry in. And he was very positive about the poem and said that I take people into different lives and how kind of exciting and alive the poem was. Because I think the poem was very real. It was about a real experience that happened to me, and I think I managed to convey the kind of the tension of the situation, but also bring out meaning from it that's still relevant now.
For sure. Well, that's just fantastic and amazing that your work has gone from a place where you were sat writing it around the cog of life, around a busy, busy career, and now people are following your work. You're getting awards for your work. It's brilliant. And I can vouch for the fact that you are good at putting yourself into different moments through your poetry, because you've got a realm of poetry. Sometimes it's silly, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's serious. Have you got anything that you're working on at the minute?
Yeah, I've
Which
just
sounds like a silly question. Silly question there, of course you do. You never stop.
One about a Paddington Bear at Paddington Station, so it's one that I feel I can perform at the statue in Paddington. I'm working on one about Isambard finished yet. I'm also working on one about Bruce Springsteen, and I've just completed one about which is kind of for Easter. It's kind of it's about what Mary, the mother of Jesus, what her experience was like when she went through this loss. Mm-hmm. And so it's not really a religious poem. It's more kind of using that. I think it's kind of an idea that's familiar to most people, who Mary was, and talking about loss and bereavement and grief. And obviously it's kind of set in a region of the world where there is a lot of suffering and grief at the moment. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like to feel it's in one way it's a historical poem based on an old story that many of us know, but it's relevant to the tragedy that's going on at the moment.
For sure. And I think grief is a subject that loads of people will relate to, regardless of where the basis of that story comes from, or loss, as you say, grief and loss and all of the things associated with that. Look, we can't just skip over the fact that you said that you have this bespoke poetry style that you've created, where you literally will go up to people you don't know, ask them about life experiences, and then produce a poem for them out loud.
Yes, that's right.
How that must take a lot of confidence to do.
Yes, I do really enjoy it though, and I don't worry about it now, because I think I've done it so much I've got used to it. And sometimes people will be a bit rude or a bit mainly because they're worried and suspicious. They think it might be a scam or a trick. So, but I do enjoy it, because people say things back. People say to me, "Oh, thank you for that." After I've done the poem, I memorised this poem when I was at school. Can I say it back to you? Or they'll tell me quite interesting, fascinating things about their life, particularly as I was doing it for Remembrance Day. I mean, I talked to a guy who was on a ship in the Falklands War. I talked to a couple whose daughter was in the RAF serving at the moment. I talked to somebody who, I thought this was the most interesting. He discovered that there was somebody it's sort of in his family who had no descendants, who had been killed in the First World War, and he'd got in touch with the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, found out where the grave was, found out about him, so that he could pass down that story, in his family, and it be an inspiration, something that they could all learn from.
Fantastic. I mean, to get those stories so off the cuff as well, and for people to be able to open up to you, I guess you've developed this tact of maybe who to approach and how to approach people. I mean, what's your opening line? If I was a commuter in a station, how would you get my attention?
Yes. Hello, I'm James. I'm poet of Paddington Station. I'm doing poems for free. Would you be interested in hearing a poem about Remembrance Day? And you might say yes. Or I might say it's National Poetry Day. I'm just doing poetry, or it's some other time. And I'll say, well, could you tell me something about your journey, where you're going to? That's really interesting. Why are you going there? And I'll get some people sort of then reveal things, sometimes that are quite quirky. And I'll say, well, look, I think this poem, might connect with you in some way. And then I'll do the poem.
It sounds like free therapy, I think. Just having a moment of calm.
Well, it is for me as well.
Yes. Having a moment of calm and stillness and just hearing somebody, recite a poem and exchange ideas. I love it. I love it so much. Look, James, I know that you've got a busy night. You're part of this busy night. Just shout out the charity again that you've been mixing with tonight.
Heropreneurs. So it's like hero and then preneurs, the end of the word.
Heropreneurs.
Yeah.
Super.
Yeah.
Well, James, thank you so much for joining me. People can follow you on Instagram at James Pendle Poet, Pendle, Pendle, if they want to find out more about your work, where your work takes you next. But whilst we will let you go, we have something that we've stored for you because this is your first appearance on Radio London this week. Shay Corgaval caught up with you on her afternoon show and you recited a poem for Shay, which was just beautiful. Can you just give everybody a top line on that poem and what it's called before I play it out?
Yeah, sure. So the poem was written on the day that I looked at a newspaper in the morning and saw on it the face of a friend of mine who had been killed in the terrible war in Afghanistan. And in the middle of the newspaper that day, there was kind of a celebration, an account of the first lunar landing, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins. And I sort of, in my head, that story kind of became mixed up with this shocking news that I'd received about my friend. And so the poem really describes my experience of reading that newspaper at that time.
For sure. I can't imagine those emotions you were experiencing. I suppose everything all at once and very surreal. And, lots of love to you because as much as you have some wonderful stories from your time in the forces, of course, there are those sad moments too. Those moments that you look back where there's people that were with you for a certain time and then you open a paper and you see a story like that. So big hugs to you because I can imagine it's something you still sort of navigate through life as much as, poetry's written and conversations are had. I think grief and loss always sneaks up on us when we least expect it. But how wonderful that you've used your talents to create such beautiful poetry, and thank you so much for sharing it with us here on BBC Upload. We will be getting you back for the open mic night in December, which is exciting. Yeah. So this isn't the last we'll hear from your poetry, but thank you so much. Just give everybody the top line of that poem and they'll hear it, and we'll let you go back to your wonderful night at the Shard.
Thank you. So the poem is called Breakfast, 3rd of July 2009.
Breakfast, 3rd of July 2009. Turning to the paper's middle pages, I'm reminded that 40 years ago, those men were sent in such a fragile craft that President Nixon rehearsed a speech to tell us they wouldn't be coming back. Buzz had brains of a rocket scientist and the courage of a fighter pilot. Neil Armstrong was a leader with the faith, I think, of an archbishop. And Michael Collins could wait alone, knowing some things can't be helped. And you, I hadn't expected to see you on the front of the newspaper. I had always thought that you'd come back, laughing with stories and Pashton carpets, to hide the sadder moments maybe, a sense of disquiet, well, perhaps. But I thought you'd be back from Helmand. I still have the Billy Bragg cassette you lent me at Sandhurst. You liked Philip Larkin. Humanity was a faith we shared. Observation, a gift we both practiced. I wanted to borrow some of your other gifts, but you could not offer them. And now what I never had isn't there. Just your face. No, I mean your faith. At breakfast.
I have to take a little moment there. It's so empowering, isn't it? The power of words, the power of spoken word, and how spoken word and something in your head can just articulate a feeling, a moment, and he's just absolutely fantastic. James Pendle there. You'll be hearing more from him at our open mic night in December. If you'd like to take part, it's alice.dale@bbc.co.uk for any questions you have around our open mic night. Otherwise, submit your poems to us at bbc.co.uk/upload. Just make sure you're submitting them to the London strand of BBC Upload. So it comes to us, it comes to me, and you might, you never know, if you submit, you might get to sit next to James at the next open mic night. It's a fantastic evening. 5 or so poets that join me here at BBC Broadcasting House. We have a roundtable discussion. We hear a little bit more about their influences, why they started writing, and we just chat about life. We have conversations that I wouldn't see written down on a form in bullet points if they were submitting their work to me. But it's amazing. Just hearing about the many lives we've all lived in the creative worlds, for sure. And me and James were having a laugh about that last time we smoked, that he certainly lived a lot of lives, and is now using a lot of his time to chill out at Paddington Station, talking to commuters and reciting poetry, and it just sounds wonderful. So James Pendle Poet on Instagram if you want to follow more.